Okay, so I got cut off at that last video right in the middle of my problem, and I kept on going, not realizing that the problem stopped recording. So last thing we had said was angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. We have our 3 congruent symbols. So now we can say the 2 triangles are congruent. And if you look at the markings, it is angle, angle, side. All right, so that we're not done because the proof wanted us to show that 2 angles were congruent. So now that we have proven 2 triangles are congruent, we are going to keep going now. And we're going to start off right where we finished. We're just proved 2 triangles were congruent. So now we're going to say if triangles are congruent, then corresponding parts are congruent. We get to conclude that anything that's not crossed off the list also is congruent. So there's 3 other parts that are still on our list. We don't need all 3. This proof just wanted us to prove that angle 1 here is congruent to angle 2, or these 2 angles are congruent. So that's the only one I need to conclude. So now we are done with this proof, because that is what it wanted us to prove. All right, so I would like you to stop the video, go and work on problem number 1, back on the front. You're proving corresponding parts are congruent, and you're starting off with parallel, so there's a lot of things that you are going to need to use in this proof also. All right, so pause the video and then come back and watch another one. All right, see you in a bit. Okay, welcome back. All right, we're now going to do problem 2. All right, I already started doing it, so I have covered up my information. All right, so again, we are trying to prove that 2 line segments are congruent. So if you look at the picture, I'm trying to cover up everything I wrote down already. We're proving line segment UW is congruent to line segment TW. So UW is in triangle. I'm going to use the same letters in the same order. Triangle UW, and S is the missing letter. We want to prove that's congruent to line segment TW, and in this triangle, R is the last letter. So that's my correspondence. I already went ahead and wrote down all my congruent sides, all my congruent angles. I numbered them, and I put the numbers in the picture. So you can pause and wait until you're all done doing that, and then turn the video back on. All right, so I already kind of started this. So we have given rectangle SRTU, and there should be a comma. So I'm going to stop there. And again, with a rectangle, there's actually 3 conclusions you could make. We can say opposite sides are congruent. We can say there's 4 right angles. It's also true that in a rectangle, opposite sides are parallel, and then if we have the diagonal drawn in, we can maybe use alternate interior angles are congruent. So let's check the first case. Let's see if using the fact that opposite sides are congruent would help us. So look back at your picture. All right, opposite sides of the rectangle are the top and bottom. Those are not in our list. Opposite sides are also the right and the left, and those are in the list. They're right here. So we're going to take our vocabulary word rectangle, and we are going to write, if we have a rectangle, then opposite sides are congruent. All right, from that I can make the conclusion that line segment SU is congruent to line segment RT. All right, crossing that off the list, putting my markings in the picture, and that is 1 congruent sign. All right, now, with a rectangle, we could also say there are 4 congruent right angles. So look at the rectangle. You have this angle up here, but we don't need that whole thing. That's a right angle. We don't need the whole thing. Ooh, but angle 6 is a right angle, and so is angle 5. So I can use the same fact that I have a rectangle, and I can also conclude there are 4 congruent right angles. So I'm not going to conclude all 4. I'm only going to use the 2 that are out of the list. So it's angle 5 is congruent to angle 6. I can put my marking in there. I'm crossing it off my list. That is my second congruent sign. Now I want to check if I can use, if parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. Now it is true that the top and bottom are congruent, and here's alternate interior angles. Here's my Z, but angle 1 would be congruent to that angle. That's not helping us. This angle's not inside our two triangles. There's a Z this way. I could say angle 2 is congruent to that angle up there, but that's not helping us. So we are only going to use these two facts of a rectangle, but we're going to move on. There's another given. So now number 2, we are given that angle WSR is congruent to angle WRS. Let's see, are they in our list? No. Let's see where they are though. It's given they're congruent, so we can put that marking in our picture. WSR is this angle that's not inside our triangle. That's congruent to angle WRS. They are not angles in our list, which means we need to work with this until we can get something out of the list. Now, I am noticing that those are two angles in triangle SRW. So in a triangle, if you have two congruent angles, I know, excuse me, that if I have congruent angles, I know that that's an isosceles triangle, which also means there has to be two congruent sides. So I get to make a conclusion. So in this triangle, if I have two congruent angles, I get two congruent sides. So SW is congruent to RW, and they're in our list. So I'm going to conclude, I'm going to write the letters this way. WS is congruent to WR. That is in our list. I'm now putting in 2 tick marks. That's my third congruent sign. So now I can go and say triangle UWS, I know is now congruent to triangle TWR by, now I'm reading the markings. I have an angle, then a side, then a side. I know angle side side only works in right triangles, but that's when we call it hypotenuse leg. The hypotenuse is marked and a leg. All right, that is not what the proof wanted us to prove. So we have to keep going. So the next line after you prove triangles are congruent is always going to be congruent triangles. That tells us that corresponding parts are congruent. We get to pick something else out of this list. And look, what we want to prove is another part out of our list. So I'm going to say conclusion, line segment UW is congruent to line segment TW. Now I'm done. That's what it wanted us to prove. Okay, so I would like you to try problem 4. You could also do 8. You could also do 17. And don't forget that you guys have a checkpoint. I am collecting that checkpoint on Thursday. So make sure you do that checkpoint for homework and hand it in on Thursday. All right? You guys have a great day. Continue to be awesome for the sub, and I will see you on Thursday. Bye.